Welcome to Ralph's Fly Box. Today we're going to tie a fly that came out of a tying conclave and a joke and ended up catching fish. You can find it also in my book, One Small Trout. The name of this fly is the Guinness trout. It was referenced that if we had a fly that looked as tasty to them, to a trout, as a freshly poured glass of Guinness looked to us, they wouldn't be able to resist it. So we started messing around. I ended up tying this pattern that went on to catch fish. It still catches fish. It's a variation of a woolly bugger. That's all it is. Just the different color variations that were tied, like I said, to in humor, to match a freshly poured glass of Guinness, and turned out to be a productive fly. Let's go over how to tie it. I start out with a size 10 straight eye streamer hook. This is an Orvis streamer hook. I believe it's 3X and 2X heavy, and a gold tungsten bead. This is a heavy fly. I use it for dredging. I dead drift it. Start out with a gold tungsten bead, and then I apply 15-aught lead substitute wire. I start out at the point of the hook, and I work it forward. I do that because I'm wrapping it kind of loose, and I'm going to scrunch it up behind the bead, so I know that distance, the point of the hook, is going to put me approximately halfway when I slide it forward, and that's what I'm looking for. So you can see where I'm at the point of the bead now. When I slide that tight, puts me just about at half, maybe a little bit past half, but a perfect length for tying in my marabou tail. I'm going to start my thread. The thread is Rusty Dunn uni thread, 6/0. And I go ahead and tie over this thread to get a head start, or over the lead. We're going to cover the entire hook shank with lead, or with thread. It's a thread body. There's no dubbing or yarn or anything on the body of this fly. So I overwrap it pretty good till pretty much all the lead is covered, and then I move on to the back and to the point of the barb. At this point, we're going to tie in our tail. Our tail is tan marabou. I sweep the tips, get it about shank length, and I tie it in. I don't trim it. You can trim it if you want, but what I do is once I get it tied in, and I pull it tight because I want to fill that gap, and I bring it up to my lead. That way I can see exactly how far I gotta go. And then I trim it right there. And when I wind it down, I'm pretty much tapered in to my body. And that's what I'm looking for. Next, you're going to tie in your gold wire. This is your rib, and I had gold wire here. Must have knocked it down. We'll grab some more. You're going to tie in your gold wire. This is fine gold wire. It's not adding necessarily a real ribbing. It just gives the fly a little bit of flash. Not that it really needs too much flash. It's already got a big gold tungsten bead on there. But you're going to tie that in to the rear. Use your wraps to wind down that marabou a little bit more. I tie it in on my side, and then I bring it around when I get it to the bottom, and I wrap back to the end. So that puts that wire just about where I want it. Get it out of the way. The next material you're going to tie in is a size, if you went all the way up to the webbing, or you went to the dry fly side of the house, you'd probably be looking at about a 10, size 10 hackle. But we're going to use the whole thing. We're not going to trim it. This is out of the base of the neck. It's dry fly. We're going to tie it in tip first. And I tie a substantial piece to grab, about the same length as where I went with the marabou. I'm going to tie it in wet fly style, so shiny side towards the bead of the hook, and we're going to grab that whole thing and then bring our thread to the back. And then we're going to build our abdomen. Going to cover everything as good as possible. You don't have to overthink it. It's just shining through palmered hackle anyway. But you want to make sure that you got a solid thread base. Mainly for the color, like I said. Make sure you overwrap everything. I'm not fancy, I just overwrap it till I can't see lead anymore. So, and you could tie this with larger thread to make it a little bit easier. But I tie almost all my flies, my larger flies, with just 6/0 uni, so that's what I make do with. If you had 3/0, it would make it a little bit quicker maybe. Alright, and next you're going to palmer your hackle forward. Like I said, and I say many times, don't overthink it. Just bring it forward. Make one wrap in the back where the tip is tied in, and then fairly tight together, tighter than you'd normally probably palmer your hackle on a larger woolly bugger. You're going to bring it forward. Evenly spaced. It's going to give you a natural taper because you're tying it in. It's a long fly and you're tying it in tip first. That's what you want. Okay, and at this point you're going to give 3 or 4 or 5. You want to make sure you secure this pretty good. You're going to give it some security wraps, but you're not going to trim your hackle. Okay? And keeping this out of the way as much as you can. You're going to have to work around it. Next, you're going to bring your wire forward. You're going to counter wrap. And again, don't overthink it. Just evenly spaced. You'll trap some fibers. That's okay. You're not matching wrap for wrap with the hackle. You're evenly spacing it, probably twice as wide as the hackle was wrapped. And when you get it up behind the gold bead, again, tie it off. At that point, without clipping your hackle, trim your wire. Then you're going to take that remaining butt section, and what I do is I wrap it back, maybe space of 1 hackle turn, and then I bring it back forward. I'm going to use as much of this hackle as I can, keeping it in wet fly fashion so it sweeps rearward. And I take it till I start to get it with the real webby hackle. And the hackle, you'll know when it's time to stop because the stem's going to get too thick really to wind right. But you want to wind it tight up behind that bead. Give you that dark black collar of the furnace. Furnace goes from that lighter tip to the dark black collar, and that's what you want. Then I sweep it back out of the way and wrap a solid collar. Make sure you trap the end of that quill. If you don't get it fully trapped, it's not that big of a deal. But you want to make sure you can at least secure it. And then whip finish. I usually give at least 4, maybe 5 turns in the whip finish for this. Got it locked down tight because you got a big heavy quill you're binding down. And then secure your wraps with a decent amount of Sally Henson's. Lock everything in place. This fly will take a beating, but you can make sure that it stays together. And there it is, the Guinness Trout. If you're familiar with a freshly poured can of Guinness in a mug, this will look familiar with creamy top, dark base, gold labeling on the glass in the can. It's symbolic of one of our favorite drinks at the Conclave, and it has produced a very effective woolly bugger style pattern. Hope it adds to your box. It has added to mine. Thank you. See you on the water.